I am starting my mental health series. I know I've been meaning to do it for a very, very long time, and I'm happy to have started. I've kind of been shuffling my feet, wondering whether or not to do this because it's very, very uncomfortable for me to face some of my mental health problems. But I believe in taking care of yourself, and not just physically but also mentally. And that's kind of why I'm not shy about saying that I'm depressed, that I've been abused, and I kind of just lay it all out because I believe that if I don't, I'll just have to make excuses and lie and follow that up with another lie, and it will just become a web of lies that people uncover later on down the line. Um, but I had run a poll on Twitter about 4 topics of many topics that I was thinking about doing today, and I thought I would start strong, so it was 4 of my strongest topics. Um, and the one that came out on top, though not by much, was guilt, and that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. Um, I don't know how to talk about this. It's something that I've struggled with, I feel like, for my whole life. Even as a child, I've felt guilty about things that I probably shouldn't have felt guilty about. And it's just been one of those things that, really triggers me into having some kind of anxiety related attack. Um, and I think the root of it is that I was always a weirdo as a kid, as a teenager. I've always been a weirdo. I will always be a weirdo. But I think the thing about it is that my mom couldn't really understand it, couldn't really accept it, so I always felt guilty for being a weirdo. And I don't say that with any negative connotations. I love being weird. But my mom couldn't accept it, and I always kind of felt bad because I couldn't be like what she wanted me to be, you know? And I feel like me talking about my mom, like the relationship with my mom, will be a whole other episode. But yeah, I've always felt guilty. Like, I made an episode about how when I was younger I always wanted to be a boy because I was into all the boy things, or boy things, and I would say things like that to my mom, and she would be like, "Don't say things like that," and she would never explain why. So I would just feel guilty about wanting to be a boy, or wanting to dress the way I wanted to dress in the house. Because I knew I had to wear a hijab outside. I wasn't complaining about that, but in the house I couldn't dress how I wanted. I couldn't go and hang out with my friends, and I always felt guilty about asking to go and hang out with them. For school field trips, we would sometimes have to pay money to go to places, and I'd feel really guilty about asking about that because I never felt like my parents should have to fund anything for me. And we weren't the most well-off family, so I would always feel guilty about asking for money about anything. But I think when the real like anxiety stuck in was after my mother got ill, and I should warn you that this is not going to be easy for me to talk about, so be prepared for tears. Like, I'm already tearing up just thinking about it, and oh my god. um, when my mother was ill, I kind of knew she was ill before she got diagnosed. She had had many pregnancies. I'm the first of 6 siblings, and we're all from the same mother. So I had, after my youngest brother was born, she was in constant pain. I would be the person who would set up appointments for her. I'd be waiting outside the GP's office in the cold at like 7 a.m. before I went to school, setting up appointments for her, making sure that she went to see a doctor. And in February, I had, like, in my head, I had thought, she's sick. Like, she's like, not just like she has the flu. Like, there's something really, really wrong with my mother. There's, like, not her personality, but in terms of her health, there's something really, really wrong. And she got diagnosed in June for stomach cancer, and it was a very, very far along. It was like in the fourth stage. And from then, like in my head, I was like, that's it, she's gonna die. And I just felt, she did eventually pass away. I felt like the worst daughter in the world, because it was such a vivid thought in my head that once she got diagnosed with cancer in the fourth stage, I had thought she's gonna pass away. Like, it was a thought, and it was there, and I just immediately felt so guilty. And honestly, I kind of still feel guilty about it, even though I had no control over that thought. And I never told her that. I'd never told anyone that, really. I think I told my dad, and he was like, that's such a stupid thing to think. It was after she had passed away. And he was like, you only thought that because you didn't know how much of a loss it would be to lose your mum. Like, that's why you thought that. And I don't know, I was pretty old. At that point, I was in my final year of high school, college, depending on where you are in the world. I was 18, so I was in my final year of everything. I was finishing my A levels, but I didn't go to a single class that year because she was just so ill. I stayed at home. I looked after my siblings, and I only went in for exams. And I don't know, every single like argument I had with her, every single time I felt sad or I like cried, I still feel guilty about, because I felt like I was adding to her sense of hopelessness. And I hated that. I hated that I would feel that way or make her feel that way. I hated how I felt. I just wish I could turn everything off, and I always felt really, really bad about getting angry at her, but she was my, she was my mom. We got in arguments and stuff, just stupid arguments, like the kids did something stupid, you should have been watching them, like, stupid, like, mother-daughter arguments. And I would get mad at her, and then I would immediately feel terrible that I was upset with her. And it's just something that I carry around. Like, I can't let it go. So anytime like it hits me that my mom's gone, I just immediately feel super, super guilty. And on top of that, after she passed away, I was kind of guilted into sort of looking after the house, because I was the oldest daughter. My dad was useless in the house besides cooking, because he had worked in a restaurant before. So I'm a mess. But yeah, I was kind of guilted into helping around the house and raising my siblings, and I feel constantly guilty because I'm no longer looking after them. And like, any of you who've been around long enough on this channel to watch me talk about anything, you know that my dad is a psycho. I feel constantly guilty that that he's looking after them, like they're living in his house, and I have no idea what's happening to them. And I can't see any of them. I'm not allowed to see any of them. I have no contact with them of any kind. It just, it kills me sometimes. It kills me, especially when people like when I was still living with my family, but I was no longer living in my father's house, and my family members would talk about my siblings, and they would really, like, tell me that I should have been there, I should have been looking after them, and, like, I wanted to. It wasn't like I didn't want to. I left my father's house because he had abused me so badly, I could not live there anymore. And I had intended to take my siblings with me when I left. I had never intended to just go on my own. And I can't stop feeling guilty about that. And I know what it is. It's survivor's guilt. I honestly, like, anytime I think about how happy I am, it's tainted. It's tainted by the fact that I can't share this with my siblings, who at that point were my kids. Because my younger siblings were, you know, just babies when my mother had passed away. My youngest brother was born in the same year she died. So, and the second youngest was only about 11 months older than him. So I had practically raised them, and it felt like my own children were, like, just barred from me. I couldn't see them. And anytime I have an appreciation for how happy I am now that I'm no longer with my family, no longer surrounded by them, no longer harassed by them, it's just constantly tainted, because I can't share this happiness that I have now with any of my siblings, with my babies, with my children. And it's like, I don't know how to get rid of that. I don't know how to deal with it besides talk about it, and it causes me some true anxiety sometimes. And people, like, when they do have the audacity to lash out when family members contact me, they'll tell me things like, your mother, who is now deceased, would have wanted you to get married to a man that we chose for you, to a Bengali religious man. Your mother would have wanted you to have, you know, have continued to be a Muslim. Your mother would have wanted you to look after your siblings. They'll also bring religion into it and say that, you know, Islamically you should have stuck around for your siblings. You know, it didn't matter what your dad did to you. You shouldn't have disobeyed him because that's Islamically wrong. So they make me feel guilty for that. And then they'll also say that Islamically you were supposed to look after your siblings as well. And I'm so tired. I'm so tired of feeling this way, but at the same time, I don't know how to get rid of it. I've tried to put things in place. The only reason I even lived with family, because I had the option to live in a women's shelter after I left my father's house, the only reason I opted to stay with my family was to see if I could eventually get custody of my siblings, and it just wasn't going that way. They were doing everything in their power to keep my siblings with my dad and away from me, and they insisted, they lied and they cheated and they deceived me to the point that if I were to see my siblings, it had to be with my dad around. And I cannot stand the guy, and maybe I should make a whole other video about my relationship with him as well, but it became unbearable. And I know that I at least know that my sisters are mad at me, and their reasons for being mad are justified, because my mother passed away and then I left, and it doesn't matter for what reason I had to leave, I left, so that sense of abandonment would cause them to be angry. how do you apologize? How do you apologize for something like that, you know? I want to believe that sometime in the future, when all of this is behind me and, you know, I'm a well-adjusted adult, give me a second, and I am a well-adjusted adult, I'll be able to see them again and, you know, make amends. But what is the first step to that apology? I'm sorry that I abandoned you and left you with a psycho and my horrible family, and you had to put up with that because I left and you were made responsible. How do you apologize for that? And they're just babies, you know? They're just little kids. And that is one of my, if not my biggest demon, is guilt. Because I can't do anything. I can't do anything. Not a thing that is good for me without feeling guilty. I can't enjoy a meal that I like without feeling guilty because I'm not sharing it with my kids. And I do consider them my kids. They are my kids because I raised them from when they were children, from when they were babies. That I can't tell my mom about it. Be like, look mom, I dyed my hair. You should try it. I can't do that. And it's hard and I know it won't go away. And I try to fight it as much as I can and forget it as much as I can, but at the end of the day, it's there. It's there, it's here. And I wish I could just switch it off sometimes, but I also know that that guilt just keeps me going. It makes me want to experience everything my mother couldn't. My mother passed away when she was just 40, just under 40 actually. She would have turned 40 the next year. She passed away in December. And it just drives me to try everything I can, everything good in the world that I can experience. I will experience, because I'll never forget the fact that, you know, she passed away so young, and it also drives me. It drives me to my core to fight for every little girl and boy there is that's suffering under like a really tyrannical parent. And it drives me to fight for a way to get in contact at least with my siblings, and maybe even raise them again at some point if they'll have me. But if they're out there, if you're out there watching, I'm so sorry. And I know that doesn't cut it, but I don't know what else to say to you. I have no excuses. There is no excuse. You deserve, you know, better than what you got, and you're entitled to feel how you feel, just as I am entitled to feel how I feel. And I'm sorry. It's all I can say. But welcome to a messy start of mental health videos. And if anything, I hope that if you have this like same kind of survivor's guilt bullshit in your head, you're not the only one. And I'm not really offering a solution here. I'm just talking about my guilt and hoping that it does anything. But it's something so painful that it just permeates everything that I do. And I know there's no quick solution. I don't even know if there is a solution besides just reuniting with my siblings. But then the guilt with my mother, that's, I don't think that's gonna go away anytime soon. Um, but, you know, if this resonated with you, I hope it helped, and I hope it didn't make anything worse. And if it didn't, and you just stuck around to see me messily cry for like 20 minutes, I'm I'm sorry. I will see you in the next video, and I hope I'm not crying in that one. Goodbye.